Hi, my name's Derek Robinson. I'm a senior technical online course developer here at InterSystems, and today I'm joined by Chi Lee, physician executive here at InterSystems. Chi, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks, Derek.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about InterSystems OMOP. So really to get us started, before we kind of take a look at the product, can you explain what InterSystems OMOP is and why it's valuable for people in clinical research roles?
Yeah. InterSystem OMOP is a new offering from InterSystems, and it transforms clinical data and from FHIR format to OMOP, which is a common data model widely used by over 4,000 hospitals in 80 countries by all the researchers out there. And it is a offering that can really automate many of the processes that the clinical researchers currently have to do.
Right. Nice. That's great. So we're going to take a look at this product and see how people can use it. But kind of before we get started, what should people be aware of as far as prerequisites with their data, their infrastructure? Like, what do you really need before they can dive into what we're going to see in this demo?
Yeah. Our current deployment is cloud only, and it is on the AWS cloud. And of course, it can be later on be available in other cloud platforms as well.
Yep.
It takes the data from the FHIR data format, which is in bulk FHIR data. It's a very common standard way to share large cohorts of patient data. And so therefore, the data needs to be stored and populated into the S3 bucket, and which is where the info file is. And so a customer wants to take advantage of the InterSystem OMOP, they need to have S3 bucket.
Right.
And this is the prerequisite for them. And also the current product stores data in the OMOP repository on the InterSystem Iris Cloud SQL, which is super easy, convenient, it's all cloud. But if the customer wants the data to be put in their existing OMOP repository, it needs to have a target where to send the data to as well.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay, cool. So good ability to work with our other cloud services, but also some options if you have an existing target that you'd like to use.
Absolutely.
So I guess let's dive into the demo here. I think the first question, you kind of started on it, but the first question I had was, can you show us where this FHIR data starts, right? You said in an Amazon S3 bucket. Like, can we take a look at where that data is stored at the beginning?
Certainly. Let's take a look.
Yeah.
So here I'm showing you a deployment, but the first step is actually to go to the S3 bucket. So here I have already a S3 bucket. I already have an S3 bucket configured. And this is, you'll see a directory here called in directory. And of course, you can have multiple directories and to place all your files. Now, one thing, let's just see an example here. So this is where the file will be populated. And if I want to upload a new file, all I need to do is just to upload, click on upload. And then you can look for add files, and here's an example where there's a file here. There's a zip file. This is one where you can select and you can open and you can upload it. Now, before I do that, and I just want to show you a little bit more about the structure of the file, because traditionally the bulk FHIR format is fairly messy, has a lot of detailed data and detailed files. So what we're using is a much more cleaner type of files. So this is an unzipped file of the file that I just showed you. And you'll see that all these different resources, they're in the standard ND.json file. All these are zipped in this particular file. So this is where you would upload the file and to do this. Now, another thing you need to do is to also set up the access policy. So this is where I create a deployment here already. So another very important step that you need to do is to set up the access policy. And this will allow the InterSystem OMOP services to be able to see the S3 bucket and automatically monitor the files in there. So if something already been populated, it's not going to touch it. If there's a new file, it will start populating. It will start like extracting and do the transformation automatically. So the access policy is set up. Here, you'll see the instructions how to set up a policy access. All you need to do is just copy to the clipboard, and then you go back to the S3 bucket. And so I'm just going to go back to show you where the policy is. You go to permissions, and in the bucket policy, you'll see that box right here. And this is where you'll see these policies were just pasted in there. So this is a very important step, and so that the InterSystems OMOP services knows where to look.
Yep.
And that's a very important step.
Right. Great. So I think kind of going back just for a second to what you showed there, you mentioned that you already have the InterSystems OMOP service deployed, right? And that's where you go to get the information to create that policy. Can you just kind of quickly show people what's involved in creating a deployment, not going through the whole process yourself, but just seeing like, how do you get one of those spun up? It seems like it should be pretty easy.
Absolutely. We try to make everything easy. So all you need to do is really to say, create a new deployment. And you'll see that the HL7 services, under HL7 service, there's an InterSystems OMOP. And all you need to do is just, now this is where you specify the S3 bucket locations and the prefix and the regions and the targets and all these things. So it's very straightforward. That's all you need to do.
Right.
And within a couple of minutes, those services will be created. Great. So let me just go back to the one that I just created before. So once you create one, it will see this box shows up. It will be with all the information that you just provided. You'll see the status is running, and once it's running, you can click on it, and you will be able to see the two components of this particular service. Now, there are two parts to it. One is the FHIR to OMOP pipeline. We're using FHIR as the input because that's a standard. Most organizations are now using FHIR to share data. So from standard to standard, we putting all the automations and make it super easy. So there's no need for custom ETL development. And also on the right-hand side, which is the OMOP on Iris, using the Iris Cloud SQL, and all the schema and ontology content are preloaded. And so this allow you to stand up this service really within minutes, super easy.
Right. Nice. Just a quick follow-up on that. So you mentioned how, some people, if they already have a target destination they would like to use, they may not need to use the Cloud SQL. Does this deployment come with the Cloud SQL anyway, or would that be not there if someone had their own target?
It would not be there if somebody has another target. So in the configuration screen, and there's an option to say, I'm going to use an external repository, and you'll provide the connection strings, all the parameters. It will know where to write the data to.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so super flexible and really allows you to do a lot of stuff with the OMOP.
Right. Nice. All right, so now with everything kind of set up, can we take a look at what that actually kind of looks like, transforming FHIR into OMOP with this pipeline?
Yeah, definitely. And so go back to the S3 bucket. And so all you need to do is really to follow the process. And here, once you add a file, that's all you need to do. Once the file is added, you go back to the portal. And this is where you can start looking at all the files that is being picked up. So I'm showing you an example where the transformation has already been run. So if there's a new file, what you will see under the file to OMOP transformations, which is this is the menu under metrics, the metrics on the left-hand side, you immediately see a particular file and a file name. And as soon as the process starts, you will see the start time, but it takes some time to finish. So you will not see the end time until it's finished. But at least the process has picked up the file. Now it's processing. And you'll see that for this particular file that has about 1,000 patients and about 1.34 million resources, FHIR resources, and takes about 34 minutes in the current setup. We have already done benchmark for different size of patient files, and so it's all fairly fast. And so this should be very good. And this is where you'll see all the processes and you can check the status here. Now, one thing that I want to point out, in the status column, this is where you'll see the errors and warnings, because the file has some errors and warning. This is actually a very big problem for many of the organizations when they're trying to populate OMOP data, because the input data might have error, but they don't see that until the data either didn't appear in the OMOP. They say, why it didn't appear, right? And because there are some errors. And some of the data generate warnings. So this allows them to really to look at these errors and warnings, and particularly for those data that didn't go into the OMOP. So this has become a very powerful tool for you to ensure data quality and monitor data quality as well.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think with, I believe from what you're saying, with a lot of users of this product and really across all clinical research roles, data quality is a huge issue, right, that people are very concerned about. So, is there anything else you'd want to add on that as far as seeing that status being helpful and overall what InterSystems OMOP can do to really make sure that that data quality is up to par for our users?
Absolutely. So let me start by looking at what's in the metrics. So once you select this item, now it will show you several metrics regarding the data that goes into the pipeline. So you'll see that how many patients in the file, how many total resources. Earlier we said there's about 1.34 million. Are there any patients that has errors? 0. That's good.
Yep.
On the other hand, there are many other warnings and so on and so forth. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But you'll see that all these data types that were processed, and so this is very useful to look at what does the input data have. But then you have all these other statistics about how many resources have errors and how many warnings. You'll see that there are a fair amount. So we're going to dive deeper into it. And then also you can look at these data types coming in from the FHIR resources and looking at do they have any errors and how many resources per those types. And so this gives you a very good summary statistics about what the input data looks like.
Yep.
Now, in order to look at the errors, we actually have an error report that you can look at. Now, this is also very similar. You'll see that the same transformation was shown up here. And this is where when you select an item, it will show you all these errors. And the definition of error is that a field or a value is required. And in that case, there's either unknown coding systems or there's a missing values or unrecognized values. OMOP is very strict about the data that goes in. It needs to be certain coding standard and also a required field. You have to provide a value. So let's take a closer look at the errors and the warnings that were reported in the InterSystems OMOP product. And in terms of errors and the warning, because OMOP is fairly strict about the data that goes in, it needs to have certain coding standards that's recognized, what we call to consider standard ontology, and also needs to have values in the required field. So a lot of these input data, FHIR is a good standard, but at the same time, not all the information populated into the FHIR resource is accurate and or has high qualities. And so what we do here is to provide a very thorough, very detailed error and a warning report so you can understand what other data actually has these issues. So let's look closer into these actual examples. So here's the data error for the file that we just processed. You'll see that in the source, this is observation FHIR resource. We're trying to write the data into the observation table in OMOP and using that particular field called observation concept ID. Now, the observation concept ID is used to identify what type of data it is. So it's supposed to use a line code. In this case, the input data has this X9999-2. You'll see it right here, right? That's not a valid code. So if we put that into the OMOP repository, it will be rejected, right? So therefore, the data will not go into OMOP. So we captured this error, and so the user will know what to do with it. Because they might fix it in the source. They also might say, well, I could map it into the correct code. So this allows the user to immediately to see what are the issues with this input code. And similarly, you'll see in the warning as well. And with the exception that in the warning, this is an optional field. So you'll see the example here. This is a unit concept code. And it's a value quantity instead of actually showing the actual value as a quantity. And it says presence, which is not correct. And so, but it is an optional field. That's why it's showing you as a warning. So this gives you a very detailed report about what issues that are in the input file, so you can fix them.
As opposed to having your data be missing that data, your final data source missing that data and not knowing why that happened or why it was rejected or anything like that.
That's right. Data quality is a very big issue, and I've been to many of the OMOP user conferences. Data quality is always the top issue, and followed by how to do automated ETL.
Yep.
So what we're trying to do with the InterSystems OMOP is really try to take care of these two top issues:
Yep.
data quality and automation,
Right.
and make it super easy, and so the researchers can spend more time doing research
Right.
rather than
Exactly.
preparing for the data.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Nice. That kind of leads right into my next question as we get kind of closer to the end here, which is, you showed us the pipeline and how things are transformed and then seeing the results. Now, if it ends up in Cloud SQL or wherever it ends up as your destination, how does the end user use it? How do they end up using this data that's now newly transformed into the OMOP format?
Certainly, yeah. So for this one, the data is in the Cloud SQL instance. Yep. So it's just like any database system.
Yep.
It has the OMOP schema, has the data populated. So within the tool, we have the SQL query tool that you can actually run a SQL query,
Yep.
and just to verify things. And here's an example. Let's just actually execute it. It's counting the number of concepts in its ontology table.
Yep.
And you'll see the return right here. It's about 4.5 million concepts.
Yep.
Now, there are other ways to access this as well, which will be to use the Atlas tools. And it's very popular among the OMOP users.
Yep.
Now, Atlas, which is a user interface, a web browser based, and now can work natively on the Iris database. So this is also another thing that we are contributing to the community.
Yep.
So
Nice.
now all these research tools are going to work on the most popular clinical database in the world, actually.
Yeah. Right.
Now, the third method will be actually just to use Python, use R,
Yep.
and let me actually just show you a quick example of that. And so this is a example of the Python code. It's basically you set up all the connection strings at the top right here. And then you will be able to, looking at, in this case, we're executing a SQL query to be able to loop through all these tables and send the data out, for example. This is just one example. So if you use Python, this is perfect. Another example is certainly using this screen here. This is an example of using the Atlas tool, using the building reports, and you can investigate data. Mm-hmm. You can run cohort studies and do all these amazing clinical research that most of the folks are really good at and enjoy.
Yep. Nice. That's great. So kind of taking all that into consideration, as we close up here, are there any, best practices or tips, things that you'd recommend to users to ensure that they have, a smooth experience with transforming this data and then analyzing it once it's into InterSystems OMOP?
Yeah, I think the most important part of it is that it's recognized that this is a very powerful tool.
Yep.
And the powerful tool in the sense that it provides a lot of flexibility.
Yep.
So in this case, you see on the left-hand side, FHIR to OMOP, right? On the right-hand side, OMOP on Iris. Mm-hmm. And the best practice, one key part of it is really understand your data source.
Yep.
And it's using the FHIR standard. So you have to make sure the FHIR server, where you're getting that from the EHRs or any other clinical systems, is working.
Yep.
And working well. That's also very difficult, but this is very important. And we certainly have additional technology from InterSystems can help with that as well. With our FHIR server, with our bulk FHIR coordinators that can do all of that. And another very exciting thing that this will do is around automated refresh, which is also, for example, daily refresh.
Yep.
So a best practice there will be, if you want to take full advantage of this offering, is to create a process that can extract data based on the frequency that you want from the FHIR source.
Yep.
And then you can package it and create an automation routine that can place the file into the S3 bucket. So this will automatically refresh the data. It will remember who are the patient that's new, who are the patient that's old, and then existing patients, so you can do refresh. So this become very powerful, really create a new use cases for OMOP.
Yeah.
So it's not the traditional way, which is every few weeks or month, people refresh it. Now you can refresh every day. So you can use it for clinical trial recruitment, you can use it for quality, clinical monitoring, all these amazing things.
Right.
And we're here to help you to set that up, of course.
Exactly. Yeah, and it sounds like it's really all driving towards that key objective of allowing, the clinical researchers to spend more time doing this research rather than having to deal with these data, moving data around and transforming it and things like that. So
Absolutely. Around the world, in Europe and in the U.S., we're seeing OMOP become more and more of a standard, which not only the regulatory agencies, they really are seeing this growing adoption by the industries, by the researchers. So now there are many efforts try to standardize OMOP. And so I think as researchers are asked to do more OMOP repository-based research, we really want to take care of the painful part, getting the data preparation, data transformation, just make it super easy. And this will be actually really helpful as the world is adopting more and more using OMOP.
Right. Nice. Well, Chi, thank you so much for the crash course on InterSystems OMOP, and we're excited to see how everyone uses it.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks.